Okay, well, we can go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I am Ashley Cash, Director of Housing and Community Development. We are so excited to see you all here this morning. We are here with the workshop, our Community Development Block Grant CARES 3 training, and we use CB, the acronym CB for COVID, for CARES. These are funds that came from HUD specifically to address challenges related to the pandemic. We've had two other rounds of it. I see some familiar faces, some people who were recipients of the first and or the second round. And so now we've got a little bit of additional funding available. And so we're excited to talk to you all about that, to share the eligibility, the funding amounts. Those of you who have had these grants before, y'all may have some specific questions, which we can get into at the end, and then we hope that your questions are answered throughout the presentation. With that, I am going to turn it over to, well, actually a little bit of housekeeping. So we did request, if you're not presenting, so we are just requesting staff share their cameras. Others are welcome to go ahead and turn their cameras off, so we won't be a distraction as we're going through the presentation. And then at the end of the session, we'll have Q&A. I'm not sure if it'll be live Q&A or we'll ask for questions in the chat. So somebody will confirm that. With that, Travis, I see your camera on. Am I turning this over to you or to Tanya?
Travis will be handling the first part of the workshop.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be me.
All right, wonderful. And so with that, I will hand y'all over to Mr. Travis Young.
All right. Good morning to everyone. I hope you all are having a good morning. Today is basically an opportunity for you all to apply for a third round of CDBG CARES funding. And if you could go to the next slide, please. Okay. So basically, the primary focus for this round of funding is eligible for nonprofit organizations and the uses for public service programs. And every program basically has to meet the primary national objective for CDBG CARES in terms of benefiting low and moderate persons in the community. Next slide, please. Okay. So the CDBG Community Development Block Grant Program has notified the City of Memphis Division of Housing and Community Development that will receive a formulated allocation of CDBG CARES funding that will be used specifically for the prevention, preparation for, and response to the COVID-19 virus. This allocation was authorized by the Coronavirus Aid Relief Economic Security Act, or CARES Act, the Public Law 116-136, which is signed on March 20. Next slide, please.
Travis, do you need the next slide? I'm seeing COVID funding area. What are you seeing on your screen?
Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, for the funded areas, basically, as I stated before, is to serve the moderate income persons or also the urgent need in response to the COVID-19. So you have to meet the CDBG national objectives. In this case, we chose to serve moderate persons, like I stated before, in urgent need of response to COVID-19. The available funding amount for this round of funding is $1.5 million with a minimum of $50,000, but you can apply for a maximum of $150,000. And the award average that we're anticipating is roughly about $80,000 per application or per project. And just as a, I'm sorry, can you go back 1 second? And just as a small caveat, this grant will not be allowed or awarded to any governmental agencies. It is strictly for nonprofit organizations. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of the eligible requirements, as I stated, each one of these have to meet at least one of the 4 federal requirements, which is the national objectives for benefiting low and moderate income persons, to prevent slum or blight, and to meet an urgent need. But it must also be an eligible activity within the CDBG CARES statute, or be in direct response to COVID-19. The funds may not be supplemented or available for the same activity from any other sources. So if you're receiving funding from, let's say, Shelby County or another federal government grant in terms of same activity. Next slide, please. Now, to kind of clarify a little bit more things in terms of eligible activities, the activities that are proposed for the funding must qualify as an eligible CDBG CARES activity as listed under the Code of Federal Regulations. Now, under the Code of Federal Regulations, you can find this in 24 CFR subpart C 570-201 for basic eligible activities. And also, if you have any other questions or anything that you're kind of unfamiliar or confused about, you can always reach out to us. Just continuing. The CDBG CARES 3 public services have to be direct, frontline service programs that respond to the community's need arising from COVID-19. And the eligible services are those that are new and they also quantifiably increase the levels of service anticipated by COVID-19. So therefore, you can have an existing program already up and running, but these funds can be used to increase the level of service or supplement other programs. Next slide, please. Okay. Included in those services as far as eligible activities, which include financial counseling to people impacted by COVID-19. That can be anything from any financial literacy courses to help with people who may have been evicted or trying to establish some type of housing. Mental health counseling for people impacted by COVID-19. Food pantry operations, homeless services and housing for people impacted by COVID-19. Domestic violence service or case management and relocation services. As well are aware, there are a few emergency shelters that do handle domestic violence. Another activity is senior services and meal delivery to homebound elderly. We also have meal delivery to quarantine individuals or individuals that need to maintain social distances due to medical vulnerabilities. Please let me know if I'm going too fast and through each slide. Another eligible activity is to provide testing, diagnosis, or other medical services at a fixed or mobile location. Also, to increase the capacity and availability of targeted health services for COVID-19 response within an existing health facility. So therefore, if you're partnering with a established hospital like LeBonners or the Med or different things like that, and they're providing testing, that is basically an eligible application that you can put together. So you can partner with other entities. And last, as far as eligible activity, is the purchase of specialty equipment, supplies, materials necessary to deliver public service during an infectious disease pandemic. Some of those specific supplies can include PPE such as masks, hand sanitizer, and the purchase of thermostats. I'm sorry, thermometers, sorry. Next slide. Now, in terms of the ineligible activities. CDBG CARES Round 3 funds cannot be used to improve buildings or portions thereof which were used for general public conduct of government, except for the exception of making the buildings accessible for persons with disability. Also, payments for general government expenses are ineligible, along with political activities or income payments. And the last thing is funds may not be used for subsistence type payments made to an individual or family for items such as food, clothing, housing, which would include rent or mortgage or utilities. Now, there are other programs that are active currently, like our ERA program, which is also we partner with Shelby County for it, that pays for rent and utility pay, emergency rent and utility payments. So that's basically what this is saying, that those funds cannot be used for these particular types of payments made to individuals or their families. Next slide. All right. Now on this slide, this is basically a layout which will be talked about a little bit later on in the presentation. This is a copy of our agency revenue and expenditure budget. So let me see if I can share. Okay. All right. Can everyone see my screen? That's a yes or no. Shake your heads. All right. So I'll pull this up a little bit better.
It's very small.
And
That
how
was a
about now?
yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, basically, when you're filling out this agency revenue and expenditure budget, for the first part that you can see on these first 3 rows, well, first 5 or 6 rows, this is basically where you'll put your information for the revenues for your entire agency, which is including the budget for your particular project for the CDBG CARES. Now, this would include funding that you're receiving not only from us, which would be government grant funds, but any non-government grants, agency fundraising that you receive, donations for other entities or the private sector. So for the next part from here down is basically information where you input all of your expenditures that you have for the agency overall. As I said before, this is including not just this project for your CDBG CARES, but any other projects that you have going on within your agency. So I'll kind of give you all kind of a slight run through real quick here. So for this first column, this is basically, for the first column, as you can see here, this is where you will actually put your fiscal year 22 budget, which would have been last year between July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022 for fiscal year 22 for your agency. So let's say, for instance, if your revenue for last fiscal year was, let's say, $100,000 in government grants, and you fundraised $20,000. Then your total will be total of $120,000 for last fiscal year for your agency. And for the current fiscal year, which is fiscal year 23, which you all will be applying for, let's say your agency has raised $30,000 and received another 120,000 for this year, which will increase your agency revenue by about $30,000. And the main one you really want to focus on is this middle column, because this is what you're actually applying for currently. These are the numbers that you actually have that you can kind of give in terms of making your application a little bit better. So let's say, for instance, if you have $50,000 in salaries and you contract out services outside of your agency, that those are basically the services that you all may not take on specifically yourselves. That can include like architectural drawings and services, construction cost, legal cost, and some financial cost. So let's say 10,000 for your contracted services for the agency, and you're paying about 2,300 for your rent. So far, your expenditures are basically $62,300, and you're paying about 60,000 for bookkeeping and audit purposes. Utilities average out about 10,000. And finally, for phone services, you have about, what's that, 132,000. $15,000 for phone services, and finally for other, you'll have about 2,600. Let's increase that to 27. So basically, at the end of the day, you should have a budget right down here at zero. Your balance should be equal out to zero, whether it's for last year's budget, this year's budget, and finally your estimated 2024 column is no different, but you may not know those based off the current past 2 years, but you can kind of estimate by doing the average. So does anyone have any questions regarding their agency revenue and expenditure budget?
Travis, there are some questions in the chat, but we'll go through those questions at the end of the presentation.
Okay. Okay, can we bring the PowerPoint back up, please? And can you go back one slide? Okay. Now, the next one of the next important documents that you must have is your program budget. Now, this is vital to whether or not your budget will make it to the review committee as well as the amount that you're applying for. So I'm going to reshare my screen again and walk you all through the program budget. Can I get the share permission? Thank you. Now, basically, to kind of save us some time, for the CDBG program budget, the first line you'll put is the name of your agency and then the program name for which you're applying for funds for it, as well as the funding period. In this case, we use TSY Incorporated, and the name of the program is TSY Food Pantry. And the funding period is basically from January 9th of 2023 through December 29th of 2023. Now, your program budget may look similar to your agency budget, but the difference is in this first column, this is strictly the budget that you're focusing on for your project or program. However, in the first few rows, as you can see, you still have your revenues, and then in the next ones, the operating expenses for the program itself. So you're only focusing on this one project. In this case, for the budget or for the funding you receive from ACD that you're applying for, that funding will probably go, well, not probably, but it will go under the government grants and contracts. Anything outside of ACD funding that you're applying for here today will go in the next column. In this case, it totaled down to $22,000. Now, as you're putting these in, these should add up across the rows to equal up the full total amount for this program. In which case, for this particular program, we have $72,000. Now, as I stated, in the first column with the CDBG CARES budget, that is the budget of $50,000 that was applied from ACD and you were awarded. As you see, under the operating expenses for the project, only $25,000 of those dollars were used for salaries. $2,000 were used for contracted services, $6,000 for occupancy and rent, and $15,000 for various other things such as material, utilities, and bank fees. In the next column is the non-CDBG CARES budget. As I stated, these are all the funds that you receive outside of ACD, where in this case it was $15,000 given from the agency just fundraising, and $6,000 from non-government grant contracts, and also $1,000 that was just given for donations, which came out to $22,000. Now, from those outside funding, $15,000 was also applied to the salaries, which gave the program itself a total of $40,000 for the overall salaries for this one particular project or program. $1,000 of that non-CDBG CARES budget was given to communications, as well as an additional $6,000 to go along with $6,000 from the CDBG CARES third round to occupancy and rent. And as you see across $6,000 and another $6,000, the total for the occupancy was $12,000. And as stated before, once you put in the amounts for the revenue and the amounts for the actual expenses, you should have an expenditure total of a zero balance. As you can see in both the first and second column, which are two different funding sources. And in the very last column, as you see, the total program budget or project budget was $72,000. And everything was added across each row to give whatever the overall budget for this project was, which was $72,000. As you can see during the layout of everything, $72,000 were spent as well as from what it was budgeted. Now, the last part that's very important is the budget justification. Now, for this one, I'll have to kind of go back to the slides. Next slide, please. So when it comes to the program budget justification, this is a breakdown of everything that you are applying for in terms of the expenses of your budget. So I'll use the example of occupancy and rent. Now you'll give the address where your building or the project is actually being utilized or the services are being provided. You can give the square footage or the monthly rate per square footage that you're paying for that specific location, the number of square feet, also the number of months that you're paying for. So you may be paying rent every month for a total of 12 months, which will then give you a cost. From there, you'll basically assign a percentage of what the CDBG funding will cover. As you saw in the previous slide with the program budget, under the first column, there was $6,000 applied to the occupancy and rent for the CDBG. And with that being said, it will give you your total amount cost that'll be charged to the CDBG Care third round of funding. And the same can be utilized for like salaries in different positions, as well as some of the other line items that you may, other line item costs that you may have, like in terms of supplies and communications. So when you look at communications, if you're talking about cell phone, company cell phone or job cell phones that your employees have, you'll take the number of employees for this particular project, multiplied by the number of monthly charge of how much you pay for each cell phone in order to get how much you want to charge to the grant itself. And you have to break out these different amounts to better give us an understanding of what it is that you're trying to apply to the grant. And as I stated, if you all have any questions or need a better breakdown of this, we will more than likely, and more than willing be available to help you all walk through this. Next slide, please.
Uh, Program compliance. Good morning, everyone. My name is Charles Gordon. I am the monitoring and compliance administrator here for HCD. And my goal is to ensure that for HUD related funding, CDBG, ESG, home, and HOPWA funding, that we ensure that that we're in compliance with directives set forth by HUD, both internally and externally with our subrecipients. So we are here as a support function, both internally and externally. We ensure that for our subrecipients, the programs that they are funding um, are within the guidelines of what they can use funds for and what they cannot use the funds for. We also ensure that we are responsible for monitoring and project monitoring on an ongoing basis to ensure ongoing compliance. And we do provide technical assistance to both our internal and external customers. So, in a nutshell, compliance is here as a support function to ensure that HUD guidelines are being followed with regard to program requirements. Any questions and concerns about how we can be supportive can be directed to us, and we will certainly work um, within guidelines to ensure that all the support that we can provide to both our internal customers and our external subrecipients, that we do that. Thank you.
Good morning. I am Tanya Johnson, Grants Coordinator for the division, and I will be going over the application process as well as the portal for applicants. First, we'll start the grant open today. I apologize, it's October the 11th at 8 a.m. All grants must be submitted in the portal. The application period closes November the 15th, 2022 at 4 p.m. 4 p.m. Application review by HCD staff for completeness, November the 18th. Scoring and ranking review, December 9th. Preliminary award, December 21st. And contracting process begins January 1st. Now, these are preliminary dates. As we move through the process, if those dates change, we will notify the applicants. But most importantly, the application is open today at 8 a.m. So for those of you who have applied before, the link is on the City of Memphis website. Vanessa, if you can go to the next slide, please. Completeness and eligibility review. Notification of application submission. All applications will be reviewed if they are complete. There is a matrix of required documents located on the City of Memphis HCD website, as well as the application on the profile page. For those of you who've applied through our skill process and our COVID process before, there is a portal page in which you have to complete all the information. On that page, we have a link for the guidelines for the application, the matrix of required documents for this particular grant, as well as a link for the program budget and the application budget to be uploaded in the portal, in both sections of the portal. Next slide, Vanessa, please. Eligible electronic applications are available. This is the link. It's on the City of Memphis website, HCD, and then you will go to funding availability and click on the application link for CDBG CV3. Again, the deadline is November the 15th at 4 p.m. via electronic submission. Now, I would highly suggest for those of you who are new to applying for our grants on the portal that you attend our portal training. Our portal trainings will be Monday, October the 17th at 10 a.m. and November the 1st at 2 p.m. You will receive emails to sign up for the portal training, which will be administered by myself as we walk through the training. It is very important because a lot of the links that are on the application are mandatory, which means those links have to be uploaded in order for you to move to the next section of the application. Thank you, Vanessa. Next link, next page. Application components. You have, first we have the access, which is the link. Again, it's located on the City of Memphis web page. Then you would create an account. For those of you who have applied for our skill applications before, as well as our first round of COVID 1 and 2, I apologize, but the way the portal is set up, you will have to apply with a new email. So you have to create a new profile for the application. Once you complete the profile, upload all of the documents that are required. Please take note to the documents that are required. Upload those documents, and then you'll be able to move to the application process. Without loading those documents that are required, every field which is required, you will not be able to move to the next stage, which is the application. Once you get into the application and you're completing it and you're ready to submit, I suggest that you save your application, go back through it, review it before you submit it, because once you submit it, we cannot unsubmit. It is submitted to me, and if there are some changes you have to make, you have to go in and start over again, which means you have to create a new profile, upload the documents again. So I strongly encourage you to go over it, proof it, make sure everything is there that you need to have submitted. Okay. Once you submit the application, you will receive an email stating that your application has been submitted. I also strongly suggest that you print a copy of the application that you're submitting. Electronic application portal. This is where we start. If you do not, for those of you who are new to our process, this is where you create your profile. Again, I do apologize, but we have to create new profiles for our past applicants. You will create a profile, which is an email address and a password. This allows you to get in and out of the application as you save your progress. Okay, next. This is just a screenshot of the applicant profile. You see we have at the top, there's a matrix of required documents. Once you pull up that matrix of required documents, over to the right, you will see CV3. Those are all the documents in which are required. So again, those are on the City of Memphis website, Housing and Community Development, on the funding opportunities, as well as once you get into the portal, they're at the top of the application. Those are links that you can download. So anything that has a red asterisk is a required. It is required. You cannot move to the next process in the application until you complete your profile. Okay. And at the bottom, you will see where you will, I'm sorry, Vanessa, at the bottom, you will see where you will click which program you're applying for, or which fund, which eligibility activity that you are applying for. That is very important as well. This is just another snapshot of the portal. Documents that are required. They're kind of small, but again, I ask that you download the matrix of required documents and you will see all of these. They are required. Your application cannot be submitted without these required documents. The portal will not let you move to the application without these required documents. Okay, next we have the narrative input. This is a glimpse of the actual application. So once you have submitted your profile, you've completed everything in the profile, you've uploaded your documents, you are satisfied with what you've uploaded, then it will allow you to move to the application. You will start with the questions. These are just some of the questions. They're kind of tiny. It's just a snapshot of what you will see as you move through the process. Okay, applying. Applicant profile must be completed prior to continuing to the application stage. This is very important. Documents, narratives, budgets in the application profile section are intended to provide information about the applicant's agency, not the project. Project specific information is specific to the program application. Now, at this point, you will see where you will have to upload your the agency's budget. Only in the profile section you upload the agency budget, which is a required document. You only upload the program budget in the application, so pay attention to those, the applicant's, the agency's budget, as well as the program budget. The electronic submission tips. To print and review application at any time, select the eye icon in the profile and application homepage. You will see that in the application. Please make sure that you print off a copy of what you're submitting. So you will have a copy for your records, as well as, if it's man-made, machines are man-made. You may get say, hey, I submitted my application. And I'll be like, I don't see your name. And then, hey, here it is. I submitted at this time, this date, this time. You have a record for yourself. Profiles from previous application are not active. You will have to create a new profile for the COVID-19 CV3 application. Okay. Each application has a save draft and a save button. It is best to save as a draft until you are ready to submit as final, because once you submit as final, we cannot go back and unsubmit. You will have to start all of your hard work over again. Okay. Save a copy by downloading as a PDF document. Please make sure as you're moving through the process of the applicant portal as well as the application that you're saving your information. All documents, anytime that you see a red asterisk, those are required documents and they are threshold items. Threshold items mean your application will not be selected or reviewed if those threshold items are not met. So importantly, make sure you're downloading the matrix of required documents from the City of Memphis HCD webpage under funding opportunities CV3, as well as when you open the application up, those documents are at the top of the portal. Okay. Questions. That's all that I have. Again, the dates for the portal training is October the 17th at 10 a.m. and November the 1st at 2 p.m. Please make sure you review your email to see those emails that come in so you can register for the portal training. I look forward to seeing each of you on the portal training, It's very important, if you have not submitted through the portal training, that you attend the portal training. I cannot express that enough. Sometimes we have agencies who start and they kind of get a little lost, or think they kind of know a little bit and they need some assistance. I'm always here to assist you, but those portal trainings are very important to help you to be successful in completing your application. And my information is on the screen. If you need if you need to contact me, you can give me a call at 901-636-7387, or you can email me at tanya.johnson@memphistn.gov for any information in regard to completing your portal, or if you need information or assistance with questions about the actual grant, I can forward those to the Homeless and Special Needs Department, which is Mrs. Kimberly Mitchell and Mr. Travis Young. So we will take your questions now, if there are any questions.
So Travis, can you go through the funds, the amount of funds that's available, the number of projects we anticipate funding, and the maximum grant amount, minimum grant amount, if applicable? And then can you go back through the eligibility just to make sure, not the eligibility, but the types of eligible projects to make sure everybody understands what we're sharing?
All right, that's not a problem. The overall amount for this particular round of funding is $1.5 million. The minimum amount that you can apply for is $50,000. The max is $150,000. And the average that we anticipate as far as granting to applicant is roughly around $80,000. It could potentially be more, but as I stated, that the max is $150,000. Can we go back in the slides to some of the eligible activities, please? Thank you. As I kind of stated a little bit earlier, some of those different services that you can apply your program to can include financial counseling, mental health counseling, as well as like food pantries and different things of that nature. Now, in terms of food pantries, that can also include you doing meal deliveries to quarantine individuals or individuals that need and maintaining social distancing due to medical vulnerabilities or their body's ability to kind of contract COVID-19. Some of the other activities also include like senior services or deliveries for those seniors who cannot get out or who don't own a car, who don't receive bus vouchers or bus passes to come to your location. You can do those different types of provide those services for those seniors. There are some organizations that we work with, partnering with right now, such as YMCA, who has their wheels on Wheels on the Y, where they will pop up at different locations, but they will also do meal deliveries to schools and locations that are a little bit hard for people to get to come to them. They will deliver meals and different things to different households. But also you can use these funds to provide testing and diagnosis and other medical services at a fixed or mobile location. We partner with an organization right now, which would be who's it again?
I'm sorry.
The Labana Medical District collaboration, which also provides testing and diagnosis. Right now, they're going from different pop-up sites as well as different other workshops and locations to provide testing. As you all see on the news, you hear on the radio, you see in email blasts, you see on social media about different activities and different events where they are providing testing. And also, as I stated, you can use the funds to purchase specialty equipment and supplies necessary to deliver to your public services, such as the purchase of PPEs, masks, hand sanitizer, and other different and various supplies that may be needed. But still check with us just to make sure that they are applicable to your project. Are there any other questions in terms of the eligible activities?
Yes, I have a question. Hi, this is Angela Ventura Wooten calling from, well, not calling, but I am with Lemoyne College. I understand that if we use emergency funds, we cannot pay the actual individual, but is it allowed for us to pay the vendor instead of the individual?
Mm, in terms of the vendor, in terms of, are you talking about for housing or?
Right. So let's say if we have a student that is housing insecure and we
Mhm.
needed to put the student up in emergency housing until they got situated or got the bill paid for. A lot of times we have students that are homeless and we need to house them while we find actual housing for them. So is it allowed for us to pay the place that puts them up for that week?
It is, but keep in mind only if the student is impacted by COVID-19 for quarantine or isolation, then yes, because it will fall under the homeless service or home housing for people impacted by COVID-19.
Okay, so what if, and I know I have a bunch of questions.
Go right ahead.
We have a student.
Okay.
During COVID-19, she lost her job. And as of right now, everything is piled up, so she's been dismissed from her apartment. So while we find her another job and transportation, we needed to put her up somewhere. Is that allowable?
Mm. I have to get back with
Sounds
you
like
because it
no.
depends. Well, it depends on, like I stated before, it's really for the ones who are impact. Like, so let's say, for instance, they're still under quarantine, and I believe they lowered the number of days to down to like what 10 now? Or was it 5? Okay, but it shouldn't be a problem. But I would also refer them to the ERA
Mm-hmm.
that's offered by Shelby County, where they can do um, back rent as well as help with emergency housing. And we do have some other organizations that qualify and help with that outside of just not just these funds.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Hmm. Any other questions or concerns?
Yes, this is Howard Eddings with Red Zone Memphis NHO Management. Um, can you share some examples or some historical fundees or applications that were successful that are not major, like a hospital or maybe perhaps a local CDC type organization that is comparable in the size of some of us who are on this call? Does that make sense? I mean, I don't know how we can only buy so much PPE, and we still have some, and people want it less. But it would be good to know well, how can we get creative, I guess, to be able to access some of these resources.
Okay, well, if you don't mind me asking, well, now you got me thinking about it now. Well, one example is the use of like emergency. I noticed one of the, well, I'll put it this way. I noticed one of the questions was asking about the use of Wi-Fi, access to Wi-Fi and internet access and different things like that. And I was kind of speaking with some colleagues off screen, mainly about how those different things, where you have some students or young children who are at home due to quarantine, or their parents may not feel comfortable, where there was one organization that I know I specifically worked with this past year who was offering Wi-Fi access and internet and different things like that to help with those children who had needed access, who didn't have access to the internet to work from home with their schoolwork and different things like that. And that was a very successful program.
Okay. I mean, that's helpful because if you already own your space and you're not doing a food pantry, so to speak, I'm trying to figure out how to back into this opportunity based on what we're already doing instead of creating something different uh, and creating more work and creating a program just to get the grant. So for at 150 up to 150K, that's a lot in terms of how you can use that creatively. Um, so thank you for that. What about rents for people who have lost their jobs due to COVID, based on their assertion, due to COVID-19?
As I stated with the last person, we're referring more people to refer clients to the ERA, which is operated by Shelby County for those particular purposes, as well as use of funding, because we're steady getting an increase in the amount of funding that we're getting on that side in terms of housing. But we specifically this round want to focus more on the supportive service piece of it. So that's kind of why you see a lot of the things more in terms of eligible activities like the mental health counseling or the food pantries, even domestic violence case management and possible relocation services. So there's a little bit built into these activities that allow for a little bit of funding to be utilized in terms of what you would want to say is housing, but in terms of relocation fees, as stated by the last person's question, asking can we use that to hold in place or pay the vendor to hold them until you can find something more permanent or more stable. And you also brought up a point I meant to address during the presentation that all these projects and your projects, the funding, it is reimbursed. So once you've purchased or provided a lot of these services, you will have to submit your invoice and everything to us, and then we reimburse you for those services.
So how do you further unpack the homeless, your third, fourth bullet around housing for people impacted by COVID-19? I mean, if you were going to write a grant that, because we do some of that as it relates to people who are having struggles remaining in their housing, but we don't always know that it's COVID-19. We try to figure that out. Are there qualifiers that
Mhm.
or determinants that become qualifiers for people who may be impacted by COVID-19 and therefore can't pay their rent? How, yeah. So if we had a block of money set aside for that, and I guess I'm asking the same question differently, um, can you use those dollars for that since that's listed as your fourth bullet point?
If you have the dollars basically set aside, I get what you're asking. Set aside for that, it is possible. There's more of a question you can put in your application, and it doesn't hurt you at all to actually ask can those funds be used for that, and we'll make a determination once it goes to, well, the committee will actually make a determination on whether or not it'll be allowable. It's just really on how you word it to provide how you word it in your application.
My last question, I promise. I noticed in sort of a cure period. Um, is it an all or nothing grant or request? If we ask for 150, but the committee determines we're better off trying to utilize 110 or 80, would you guys come back to us with a plan B or an alternative budget based on y'all's assessment and analysis, or is it kind of all or nothing?
Uh,
Actually,
we come back to you if the amount that you requested in your application is different than what the committee actually award or less than what the committee rewards you, we will come back to you and we'll contact you and ask you about the services and work with you to kind of structure it based off what you were awarded, even if it's less than what you anticipated. So we'll now leave you out there. So it's really not all or nothing.
Okay, all right.
So Travis, thanks, Howard. I just sent you an email, not related. So if you want to respond, thank you, Travis and Tanya and Vanessa for putting on this presentation. Yes.
Hello? Hello?
Hold on just a second, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to mention thank you all for putting on this presentation. Vanessa, you can stop sharing the screen. We are, I think, about a minute over on our time, and we've had some really good questions, some really great questions in the chat that Kenyatta has been monitoring. We're going to wrap up. Darren, if you want to reach out to Travis via email, Travis, if you don't mind putting your email, or Kenyatta, one of y'all, or both, put your email, and we can reach out to you there. We can reach out to you via email. We're going to go ahead and wrap up the session, but before we wrap up, I was just going to see Kenyatta. I don't know if you wanted to say some last words, or Travis, if you wanted to share any last words. And I'm not looking.
I'll let Kenyatta go ahead.
Okay. I think we can hear you.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Travis. Yes, I was gonna just also say something to Mr. Howard. I know he asked a question in the chat about renting and utilities. As far as the renting goes, you cannot pay the rent for your own building, but if you're renting a space to another agency that's applying for the funds, they can do that. You can pay utilities for your building if you're also applying for the grant yourself. Your utilities can be paid under one of those eligible activities. So I didn't know if you understood what I was saying as well. And just again, like Travis mentioned, I don't know if it was in the slide as well, but this is also based off a reimbursement. So just if you jump out there, just know you do have to have those funds available beforehand because it does go off a reimbursement system. So if you're going to apply and you do get awarded, that's what we do ask for when you send your reimbursement in, along with those backup documents. And also, if you have any further questions, I did put my email down as well as Travis. And I just want to thank you all for coming on here today for the COVID-3 round of funds.
Thank you, Kenyatta. I think Tanya was trying to get in before we formally.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, just a reminder to everyone to please check your emails to sign up for the portal training. Very important. I will walk you through the training. We'll walk through the documents that are required, just information about those, because so you can be successful in completing your application, because those things that are required are threshold items, and your application will not, you can submit it, but it will not be accepted once it's reviewed by the program staff. So that's very important. Now, again, training is October the 17th at 10 a.m. and November the 1st at 2 p.m. and they'll be sent again in your email. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day. Travis, were you going to say something?
Yeah, just I want to thank everyone for coming out for this workshop. It was kind of hard because this is my first time actually doing this, but I thank you all for being patient with me. And I'm always available to answer any questions regarding any grant that we pretty much work with. You all have my email address, and I want to thank Director Cash, Tanya, Kenyatta, and all my other co-workers who work with me on a daily basis to help get different things done. Thank you all, and just have a good day.